was absolutely brilliant. That seems like a pretty nice compliment.
Yeah, we can die happy men, basically. No, that was, God, yeah, what an honour. And, you know, it was like we were having a chat with Joel earlier, Joel Anderson, who's one of our EPs, a great friend of ours, and helped a lot with the script. And we were talking about King and just how he kind of invented our childhood, basically. You know, those decades we grew up were, felt like King was, you know, was there kind of, hovering over us. And so it's quite surreal.
It's an honour, so
It's a good blurb. It's a good blurb. As part of your childhood, also like just this TV era, this setting is, I think, part of your childhood. It's kind of part of mine as well. And I was thinking about this element of in the 70s, in the 80s even, when moments like this would happen on TV. Well, maybe not like this, but when these event moments would take place on TV, you either had to see it or you missed it. And maybe in some cases it would end up in maybe a news broadcast, but that would be a very big deal. And then it enters into the realm of almost like urban legend. Like, did you ever hear about that time that Jack Delroy conjured a demon?
Yeah.
Talk about that as like the setup to the film.
Well, I mean, we had in Australia we were unfortunately we didn't get Johnny Carson and Dick Cavett and those guys in the 70s and 80s. We knew they existed and that they were huge, but in Australia we had our own Antipodean version, although the guy happened to come from the Bronx, and his name was Don Lane. I don't think that was his real name. But he was the king of late night in Australia, and he kind of loosely modelled himself on the great American talk show hosts. But we would stay up late as kids, you know, this is the early 80s, and to watch the Don Lane show. And unlike a Johnny Carson, who would just have guests on for 5 minutes, go to the break, get on your next skit, bring Bob Hope on, whoever it is, Don Lane would do these specials. Like, it was a regular variety show where he'd have bands on and performers, and, you know, he'd have 3 or 4 guests on. But there were times when he would just, for 2 or 3 nights in a row, have the Warrens on, or Uri Geller, and do specials solely devoted to these, you know, occultists or psychics or whatever it might be. So the guy was clearly into that stuff. So, you know, we both have a memory of seeing Don on with James Randi, this famous, infamous episode where James Randi, the magician turned skeptic, you know, who we based Carmichael on, took issue with Uri Geller and his spoon bending techniques and tried to show Don how he got away with it. And Don said, "But look, you're cheating." He said, "Yeah, I'm cheating because it's a trick. This is what Uri does." And he didn't like it, and he swiped all of these spoons off the table and stormed off his own show. And you might think, oh, it's just a bit of showmanship, good for ratings, but he meant it. He really meant it. And we both have a memory of watching that. It's like you say, whether we did, I'm not sure. But everyone you speak to in Australia remembers that night.
Yeah.
It's like extended folklore.
It's he said something like, you know, as he was walking off set, "I'll be back, but you won't." Like something like piss off to the Randy.
We might have stolen that line for one of the scenes early on in the prologue.
Yeah.
Where he's copying shit from the punk girl.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, you pull from a lot of moments from the 70s. So there's this, I guess, this sense of reality to this, the verisimilitude of this. It feels tangible. It feels like something that actually existed, Night Owls. And then you have David Dastmalchian, who does a great job in this film and really gets the well-deserved leading role, gets to show his range here. A little bit of Don Lane, which some of us might be aware of. It seems like a little bit of Dick Cavett.
Yep. Sure.
But also this, I think you even call it out in the film, this all shucks Midwestern vibe, which is kind of David.
That's David to a T. He's just the sweetest guy.
Yeah,
we didn't know when he was cast that he was from Kansas City or wherever. It just all made sense, you know, because our instincts always were that he was just the guy, but there's so many little things like that that proved.
Where do you think, like, what David brought to Jack Delroy, where does that kind of begin, and David end and Jack begin? Maybe perhaps association with cults aside.
Well, he's told us a few things, but...
I mean, he is that character that whole time, and sometimes it's, you know, it's hard to, because obviously he has to go to some really dark places as well, and you know, it's always funny to see him sort of shift out of those.
For 20 days he was Jack Delroy,
Yeah.
like he was in character a lot of the time, so that's David to us in some ways. I mean, we're good friends, but he's always going to be Jack Delroy to me. Put on that beige suit.
Yeah.
Well, which is also, I mean, I think like a lot of really skilled late night hosts that can turn it on, you know, on a dime, and then do the vibe shift very quickly.
That's
Those little smiles, those little jokes, and how word from our sponsors. We see that in the very behind the scenes moments with him as well. He's dapper, he's charming, and then we see these very hungry looks, these careers looks.
That's right. So then I hope in the show proper that, you know, you can take that into it and see the sort of cogs working behind the eyes. You know, that there is something else.
Once you've got a little glimpse of the real, do you ever really know the real Jack? I mean, that's kind of the question as well, because he's keeping secrets from everyone and maybe even from himself. And I think, you know, David's playing that he didn't even know the depths of his desperation and grief and all of that. So yeah, he just brought so many layers to it that, you know, in the script there was maybe 2 layers, and when David came on board there was suddenly 15. It was crazy.
And you have this character Gus, played by Reese Altieri, I believe, and Gus looks to me like he fits within the Andy Richter, Ed McMahon, you know, Guillermo kind of like sidekick world. And then he's also a bit of he's like the moral compass, the moral center as well. You are not a bad man, Jack. I'm just curious about the relationship between Reese and David, Jack and Gus, and kind of the organic development of that.
Yeah, I mean, Reese was a real discovery of ours. You know, he hadn't done any screen acting before. You know, he's been in improv troupes. I mean, he studied theatre, so he's got technique.
I think he basically said, I'm going to pack it in with, you know, pursuing a career in film and TV, because it's tough everywhere. It's tough in Australia, and, you know,
but it's particularly tough for guys who might look like Reese in Australia, the character actor types. It's
for
hard
sure.
to get work, and I guess he felt deflated from that and didn't really pursue a career, but, you know, we came along and you know, first of all, it was the look. We saw just a headshot and we thought, God, he looks like he's walked straight out of a Brian De Palma film or something, you know, from the 70s. And so we thought he's worth taking a shot on, and we'll get him in for a read. And it was funny, when he came in, he was like, I've never done this before.
I've got to be honest with you guys, I've never done an audition. Okay, we had high hopes, and he did 2 auditions for us, right? And I think by the time the second one, we saw this, you know, his confidence had built, and he knew that we were interested, and he was hilarious, his timing, and he had libs as well, like David is the same, but he and Reese together, they could have their own talk show. Like, we would let the camera, we sometimes not cool cut and just let it go and see what happened, and they riff like crazy, and, you know, some of that stuff found its way into the film. So we were very fortunate, I think, casting pretty well, but then the chemistry was, you know, you never know until you're on set, and they were amazing together.
And I think, you know, just the way that we shot, we had 3 cameras running the whole time, like a normal, you know, TV show would, 3 pedestal cameras, and you know, somebody like Reese, who maybe didn't have a lot of screen acting experience to know about hitting marks and stuff, it was great for him, because, you know, he could just be loose and the cameras would follow him. And
there were no marks at all. We said to the guys, and as if the camera operator said, oh, it'd be nice if they were, but they would say, no, it's okay, things can go a bit wrong, it's fine, it's live TV.
Well, as I think we were talking about a little bit earlier, the set, the Night Owl set is a character as well. Like, it feels lived in, it feels like a real talk show, and you went to great lengths to replicate that, perhaps to the discomfort of your actors under the lighting too. Speak to some of those.
So the lighting, we had lighting, we were shooting in a studio in Melbourne, which was great. Had a lighting group, but we filled it with all old period lights. So, you know, they were all park hands. That had been sitting in some rental warehouse for decades. And yeah, there's something about that light. It's just so harsh and unforgiving. And in a horror film, I think it kind of works. Putting these people under the spotlight and making them sweat.
Who doesn't love an overlit horror movie?
Yeah. What did you call it earlier? The color palette is
the
shit rainbow.
Shit rainbow.
shit rainbow. Yeah. Not the rainbow you want to taste. Do not taste that rainbow. The 70s setting obviously is a time when, I mentioned earlier in the intro, you have, in the blender here, you have Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, you have the kind of satanic panic that was very much emerging, and Michelle remembers, and these occultists and paranormal investigators or researchers that were going on these talk shows. What other research did you find yourselves doing to accurately reflect this time period?
Oh, I mean, every element. I mean, the music in particular, we had this ridiculously long playlist on Spotify of anything remotely...
Probably 60% Lalo Schifrin.
Lalo Schifrin, Quincy Jones.
Which I think you should share, by the way. I would love to check out that playlist, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But we shared that with Roscoe. I mean, these are sort of unsung heroes here, like our composers, Roscoe Irwin, who did the jazz stuff.
Yeah.
He turned that around so quickly, and he managed to get Melbourne's a music city. It's really got a good music scene. He got the city's best, jazz musicians to come in and play those charts. It was such a joy to experience that. And then Glenn Richards from a band called Augie March. Some of you might have heard of Augie March, who's done music on all our films. He did the more atmospheric stuff. But both of them were the brief was, again, it's 1977 and, go for broke kind of thing.
Yeah, there's perhaps, some parallels that could be drawn with 2024.
Was that
2020? 2016?
2016 to 2020, and let's not worry too much about what the future brings.
No, definitely. It could be we could have said it in any decade and still had that same doco prologue. The images might have been different, but the text probably would have been much the same.
Yeah. So
the 90s weren't too bad.
Some of the other characters that you have in this world. First out, Michael Ironside, the narrator of the kind of the documentary, the found footage up top. How did you land Michael Ironside for this?
I think early on he was someone we wanted to do it, but we just thought there's no way on our time frame with our budget that would work. But it did. We reached out to these people. It's like he read the script and thought, yeah, this will be fun. So it was really quite easy, and he was just a joy to work with, albeit by remote. We just thought he was a man who knew that time. He got the references, and we wanted a sense that it might have been someone that knew Jack, that was a part of that universe, and could impart that. It was a personal experience, but it was also you could have that professional distance and that sort of 2 packs a day gravelly voice thing that he does.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, we won't worry too much about the future. I want to talk about the future of this universe and then some of the other stuff that you guys have in the works here. This ending, especially since we've all seen it, this is great because we can actually talk a little bit on the spoiler side of things. Let's talk a little bit about the ending. As much as you can say, you're probably getting lots of questions about it. What are some of the top questions you're getting, and what are you responding with?
What the fuck just happened would be one.
Fair, okay.
Why? What were you thinking?
I know.
People come to us and say, what's your theory? And it's like, well, we're more interested in hearing what other people think. We've kind of got our own sort of backstory hypothesis as to what has occurred, but we always intended it to be a point of discussion, and hopefully for people to walk out of the cinema, if they've been engaged, for most of it, to have a conversation. So, whether you're seeing what went to air or what went down in Jack's sort of
Psyche?
in his psychic sort of breakdown, or is it Carl Michael Haig still conjuring his wonders, because he's obviously pretty good with the worms, or is it just you guys being a bit fucked in the head and imagining it yourself? So look, it's all up for grabs as far as we're concerned. But you know, we'd rather not say
Yeah.
Right.
this is the gospel of
Yeah.
what took place.
But hopefully there's enough resolution there that you go away feeling reasonably satisfied,
Yeah.
I hope.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah, like David wanted. I mean, you know, there's a reading where he actually has killed everyone in the studio as well,
Yeah.
and David was up for that reading of it.
Yeah.
So you know, I think you can walk away with that.
when he's, I don't know whether he's hallucinating, revisiting, whatever, however your interpretation, but at the end where he's by his wife's bedside again, this really great moment where she's in pain, she's trying to connect with him, again, either hallucination, memory actually happening, and he's looking towards camera.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's this great, small, like really significant acting moment. Like, was that part of your plan? Was that David? Talk about that choice because it's so powerful.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was in the script.
It's in the script.
Yeah. But yeah, David absolutely sold that idea, and it was, you know, he was looking into the audience's soul, into their eyes.
But seeking forgiveness or
Yeah.
understanding or whatever it was. But you're
Yeah.
right. I mean, what goes on at the bedside, whether that's a revisiting, a reliving, but with
Use your
some-
microphone.
Oh, sorry, revisiting the past, or is it a is he revisiting? It's not a flashback. I don't think it's a flashback, but it kind of is a.
Whatever it is.
It is what it is.
I mean, in his kind of Faustian bargain,
Yeah.
he got what he asked for.
He did, yes.
And
For one night, just for one night.
for one night. And I guess just what are the other projects that you're looking towards? I mean, this brought to life so effectively. It tapped into the horror that we love. It feels like a lived-in world, and kind of your first kind of foray into the supernatural
Yeah.
element. Where else do you guys want to go?
We want to go everywhere.
Wherever anyone will.
Whoever will fund it.
Yeah.
Look, yeah, we love all the many subgenres of horror, and you know, I think already we've sort of had a crack at the slasher and the backwoods maniac movie, and now we've had put our hand into the you know, the supernatural horror. What's up next time? We wrote this script last year that we're really happy with, and we, you know, we would love to see that get up, but it's maybe a bit too big in scope.
It's period horror, sort of gothic.
So that might be
rom-com.
2 films away, hopefully, if things go well for this and
Yeah.
whatever else comes our way. But
Or do a sequel to 100 Bloody Acres. I believe Angus Sampson's in the room. Or is he?
Yes, I thought I
Yeah.
saw him earlier. He's blending in back there, but I don't want to gloss over the fact that you said period horror,
Yes.
gothic, and then
Yeah.
you tagged on a little bit of rom-com.
Yeah, just a
Just want to highlight that.
Well, and there's romance. It's kind of this, it's a fun, it's gory, grisly, but kind of a little bit bawdy as well. A bit of a bawdy romp.
Yeah.
it's kind of our ode to Hammer horror films, but maybe with some modern sophistication.
Is that part of your DNA?
Sensibility. Hammer, we love all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah. I was born in England. We've got some, English roots, and as much as we love all the American stuff, we're big fans of a lot of British horror as well.
Well, and I kind of mentioned it offhandedly earlier, but the look of this, even though it's not the same thing, but it's sort of that grit, that raw feel, like, does, for me, remind me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as if I'm watching some sort of reel that I'm not really supposed to be seeing of something horrible that happened.
Yeah, I think we actually made a concerted effort to make it look a bit shit, to make it, or at least, feel
Which is gotta be hard.
yeah,
With
yeah,
due respect to
learn what you
that's
learn.
right. Yeah, and because everything looks so amazing these days. Everything's so beautifully lit, and even the sort of smallest budgeted films, they look pretty decent. So it's maybe a little bit of a reaction to that, and just wanting to embrace the crudeness and all those camera wobbles and boom getting in shot, and just the rough audio, and they're all things we embrace and hopefully work for the film.
All right. Well, I think we're wrapping up on time, but and unfortunately we are not going to have time for Cleo. to finish.
Not again.
Okay. That was something that I only picked up on this viewing of it. That is like they referenced Cleo a couple times. Poor Cleo, she never gets out.
Did you hear her singing though? She's doing scales.
Oh, there you
The
go.
last ad break.
Yes, yeah, there you go.
Poor Cleo.
No time for Cleo, guys. However, I'm glad that you guys made time for late night with the Devil, and I want you to make a lot of noise. The writers and
Thank you
directors.
so much.